I was going to talk a little bit about the idea of quality. I think there's an awful lot of discussion always about housing numbers. I think there's a parody of what London's housing challenge is, which is often to say that we need to get to 40,000, and then we need to stay there for a couple of decades, and then it'll be job done. We might get there or we might not. What we'll certainly do is build quite a lot of variable quality. And I think we have I don't think there's a huge amount of political attention attached to the idea of quality. And I don't think in the sector there's a hugely nuanced understanding of what we mean by quality or how you get it. So a lot of what we do at Berkeley is try to either exemplify or persuade people of the importance that they can attach to the idea of placemaking. Now, the thing about housing quality is that you don't get it from standards and policies. It tends to be something that comes from the skills and culture either in your council or in your business. So it's actually quite a hard thing to generate in lots of ways. It's not something you can set down as a diktat. And there's certainly what's happening to the public sector at the moment, I don't think is playing in the favour of increased quality of place in London. So one of the issues we worry about quite a lot is what's happening to planning authorities and the extent to which that investment might come and redress some of the cuts and the loss of personnel and the loss of confidence, which I think they've felt a lot over the last 4 to 5 years. So one of the things that we're always trying to put on the table is the need to actually get behind planning authorities. There's often, I think, a parody of developers as being in that kind of Tesco mold of wanting to charge into town and knock them dead and get the permission you want. Actually, what you really want is a really good team on the other side of the table, and then together you can come up with a vision for a fantastic place. But at the moment, I think that's quite a rare conversation. I think there's a timidity in councils to engage pre-application. I think those conversations tend to be quite patchy. I think there tends to be relatively little capacity within the public agencies that we're working with. So we get less good housing and less quality places at a slower speed. So somehow, while the public sector cuts continue, we need to find a way to get alongside planning authorities and redress that. I have some nervousness about the idea, which is quite often mooted in the mayoral election, about having a new agency, because I think what that'll do is suck in the best from the local boroughs, who will run off to a higher salary to sit in this super quango, which will make the problem even worse. So we need somehow to focus on this issue of quality and quality of place. We need to understand that it's not driven by standards and policies, that it's a cultural and an attitudinal issue. And in particular, we need to make sure that planning authorities have it in spades, because after all, I think my experience in the development world is that we generally do what we're told. And it's not often suggested that that's the way it is, but if that's the way you'll get your consent and they want it fantastic, then that's where you'll go. So a stronger public sector will help on the quality as well as the speed of development. The other thing I wanted to talk about with quality was the ability to measure it. So one of the things we've had a lunchtime session just downstairs about the idea of social sustainability. And that's one way into this debate about how do we measure quality of place. And how can we put public authorities in a position where they can get developers competing on the basis of quality of place? Which, of course, we never do. And one of the interesting things, I think when you look back at housing in London over the last 10 years, the quality of the architecture has come on massively. I think if you look at what was built kind of the early 2000s, a lot of it was quite odd and ticky-tacky. I think a lot of great architects are now working on housing projects, which is fantastic to see. That doesn't necessarily help you make the leap from mixed use to placemaking. And they're two completely different things. So we need to find a way to unpack the quality of the places that are being built in a measurable way and find a way to get developers competing on the quality of the places, both the physical and social, that they're creating. Now, Berkeley's done a lot of work around the idea of social sustainability, which we've kind of taken a deep breath and published, so it's all out there. It's putting us in a position to be able to measure people's well-being and quality of life in the places that we build. And that's beginning to develop quite an interesting narrative for us, which we apply at planning and potentially can when we're marketing and selling homes too. And it's the tip of an iceberg about quality of place, which I think a lot of other people ought to be picking up. Odd voices are coming there. I'd love to find a way to get mayoral candidates to be talking about the importance of quality of place. You know, it tends to be a very binary discussion about rent controls and how much affordable housing, when actually there's a whole other agenda about the quality of places which we can create in London. And if I was a mayor, I guess Boris's legacy will be defined by the physical environment he leaves behind, largely. And that's true of most mayors. So the issue of how they take housing, look at it in terms of the prism of quality, and look beyond architecture into the realms of place, is where I'd love to be able to push the political debate a little more.